Welcome to the Chisel Sharpening mini lesson. In this video, we're going to be looking at the steps for sharpening a chisel from the bench grinder through to final lapping and getting a micro bevel. The lessons learned for sharpening a chisel can be applied directly to sharpening a plane iron. The difference is a plane iron is typically thinner than a chisel, which means it's more likely to burn when you are grinding it. They are also typically wider, which means it's harder to keep a straight line for a wider blade. So it's just an extra challenge. Now in this video, we're going to be looking at a brand new store-bought chisel, as well as a damaged chisel. This is a damaged chisel, it has rounded corners. They have teeth kind of bite outs where clearly something was hit, maybe a nail or maybe even a screw. We need to make sure we're being careful with how we use our tools and what might be hidden in the wood. Now to keep the chisels or the plane irons cool while you're grinding them, we are going to use just simple water. And we have these little containers that fit into this convenient ledge right next to the bench grinders. Now, we can't assume that the bench grinders are set up properly, that the tool rest is at the right angle. You can see this one is not. You can buy an angle gauge from a store, or you can use your chisel, if it's a brand new chisel, to set the angle. The problem is that some of the chisels in the shop are not set up to the right angle. They've been ground at a random who knows angle. Now chisels are typically at 25 degrees. This little block should say 65, not 75, but they're typically set up at 25 degrees. Okay, so you could use a block of wood, or like I said, you could use a new chisel out of the package to set that tool rest. And once you find that angle and that chisel is sitting nice and flat, we want to tighten that tool rest really tight because there's a lot of vibration on bench grinders. Next, we're going to make a straight line across the back of our chisel to make sure we have something to follow while we are grinding. Of course, safety is a priority. Wear a hearing protection. Wearing your noise-canceling headphones with your music cranked is not considered hearing protection. They are not allowed in the shop. Make sure you have your safety glasses on, as well as the face shield. You do not want to get sparks in your eyes. Now to turn the power on the bench grinders, there is a lower main power switch, as well as the switch for the grinders. Let them get up to full speed before you start grinding. Now, inspect your chisel. We are going to make sure we follow that black line we made on the back, and we are going to make sure we keep the chisel cool. We want to dip it in water between every single pass. If we burn the chisel, that will make a more brittle point on the chisel, more likely to chip out, which just means you're spending more time sharpening and fixing your chisels. You can see here I'm using my thumbs to guide the chisel forward as well as following that black line. I'm inspecting in between. If you have grinder marks that are very crooked, that is telling you that you are not keeping it straight. Now I'm using my thumb to push down, but I'm also using my index finger there as like a fence. I'm using my left hand thumb to push the chisel forward at an even rate. As soon as the chisel touches the grinder, I push it forward so it's always moving. If you sit in one place too long, you're risking, again, overheating and burning that section of the chisel. So you want to keep it moving and you want to keep it cool. Here is that damaged chisel, and here's me going way too slow, and I'm burning it on purpose. You can see the color changing there in the blade. The easiest way to prevent a chisel from burning is to cool it in the water. It may need to stay in the water longer than you expect to get it cool to the touch. Now people typically burn their chisels at the beginning and at the ends of their passes. They typically go slower at those points. It's very important to keep the chisel moving at an even speed throughout. Now, if you check the inside of your chisel and see that the burn has gone all the way through, it will mean that you're going to have to make more passes. You're treating that burn like it's another chip in the blade. So it'll take additional passes. Now, you can go through and grind all day, or if you are trying to get rid of those damaged points quicker, you can blunt the end of the chisel, which gets rid of damage like burns or chips quicker. It's important, though, after to reestablish a face right to a sharpened point like you get it from the factory. It just makes it so that when you are maintaining your chisels, it's less work. It's also much easier at the honing stage. So once you're done grinding, shut off the grinders, Wait for the grinders to come to a complete stop. I see people walk away all the time. You may have to wait, and then you can walk away. Don't forget, might have to shut off the power switch there. If you are going to be honing with a water stone, you need to make sure to soak it in water for at least 15 minutes before you're going to use it. You can see this stone is absorbing water because those air bubbles are coming out. This just makes sure that you don't damage the stone while you're honing. In the shop, we're going to be using diamond stones. They are much more durable, but they can slide around. So either put it on a proper base. Some of our diamond stones actually sit on a little base with rubber feet. If it doesn't have that, you can always put it on a wet rag, and that'll keep that from sliding while you're using it. Coming off the bench grinder, we have to flatten the back of our chisels. Now, if you've done this in a previous sharpening, you may not have to do too much work here, but right from the factory, it is actually hollow ground. You'll see as you're doing this that the chisel actually is rounded on the back slightly, even though it appears flat. I'm rotating the diamond stone here just to kind of wear things out evenly. You don't want to only use one side. So here you can see how it's flattening it out. Now you will not have a straight cutting edge unless you flatten the back of the chisel. So it's a very important step. The good news is that you only really have to do this when you first get it. That paste there is actual metal shavings. If you leave that on, it actually increases your cutting efficiency. It actually helps you. But you can see that hollow grind. And we're trying to get a straight edge for that leading maybe ½ inch of the chisel. That'll make sure that through multiple sharpenings, you have a straight edge and you don't have to worry about doing this step every single time. Once we have lapped and flattened the back of our chisels, we will have made a burr on the front side, on the cutting edge side of the chisel, like this. This isn't the sharpest tool anymore. So we're aiming for a razor sharp 2-degree micro bevel on the very end. That's all we're honing. We do not need to hone the entire bevel of the chisel. So when we get to our diamond stone, we're going to find the flat portion of the chisel, tilt up slightly, and pull back. You can see here I'm using 2 index fingers to try to get even pressure. I find sometimes people will push too hard on their dominant side, their right or their left side, and you'll get an angular, like a tapered micro bevel on the end. Find the flat, tilt up. Find the flat, tilt up slightly. And you're trying to keep your whole upper body locked while you're doing this because people often rock and they actually make, instead of a micro bevel, they make a micro round and they round the end of the chisel. Once you've done this, it should only take 2 or 3 passes. You want to hit the back side of the chisel again because you create another burr when you do the micro bevel. Okay, and you could feel that burr on the back side. It'll look something like that. So to get rid of that burr, you can use something like a leather strap, whether it's your tool belt, a tool pocket. There are some pieces of leather kicking around the shop, so ask your instructor if there is one nearby. And you can see you're hitting the back and the front, and that will get rid of the burr off the chisel. There's also a product called honing compound you can buy, and it's kind of like a waxy chalk that you scrape onto a piece of wood. Ideally, it's a flat piece of wood like MDF or plywood, or something that ran through the jointer. Now, the leather strap and the honing compound do not actually remove any material. So they're not actually shaving any metal here. You're polishing metal. So it's very similar in the kitchen with a honing rod. And that's just going to make sure there's no burr left over one way or the other. So you don't have to super worry about your angle here because you're really just removing the burr and you're polishing the metal. And so you can see the final result is a polished end and the polished back. So now we are at razor level sharpness. To test razor level sharpness, take a piece of wood and cut the end grain. This is the hardest way to cut wood with a tool. And you can see this is kind of slicing through very easily. Another way to test it is if you want to cut with the grain, find something like a knot in your way to see if that's going to cut through that. So that's a very difficult cut as well. Remember, it is much safer and more accurate to work with a sharp tool. As you are chopping and working with your chisel, even in softwood, you will dull the end of it. Make sure to take time every now and then to touch up that micro bevel, remove the burr off the backside of your chisel, and hit the leather strap. This will make sure that you'll have the sharpest tool possible and you get the most accurate work possible. It'll be faster and you'll be more likely to stick to your layout lines. You can take thinner passes, closer shaves, cutting end grain, all those challenging cuts if you have a sharp tool. It also works with the hand plane. I hope you guys find this video helpful, and best of luck with your project.